The ancient space heater sputtered and coughed, barely pushing back against the bitter January chill that seeped through the cinder block walls of the garage. I arranged my collection of quilts, some I'd sewn decades ago for my son's childhood bed, over the metal cot that had become my bedroom. Through the frost-edged window, I could see my grandchildren laughing in the warmth of the kitchen, where the aroma of my beef bourguignon drifted through the house. This was my reward after 40 years of teaching, saving, and sacrificing, relegated to a converted garage while my homemade meals graced the table I wasn't welcome to sit at. I'm Margaret Sullivan, 68 years old, and while my son's wife thinks I'm just a burden with nowhere else to go, she has no idea who I really am, or what I'm about to do. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The garage door connecting to the kitchen opened, letting in a brief rush of warmth and the sound of my son James's familiar voice. "Mom, dinner was amazing as usual. Cassandra wanted me to bring you a plate." He set the dish on my makeshift nightstand, a stack of milk crates covered with a cloth napkin, and shifted uncomfortably on his feet, avoiding my eyes. The portion was noticeably smaller than what I'd seen them serving in the dining room, and there was no slice of the sourdough bread I'd baked that morning. "Thank you, James," I said, keeping my voice even. I'd long since learned that confrontation only made things worse. "How are the children enjoying their school break?" "They're good. Emma got the lead in the spring play, and Zachary's science project made the regional competition." He glanced at his watch, the vintage Rolex that had been his father's, the one I'd kept safe for 20 years until James was old enough to appreciate it. "I should get back. Cassandra's parents are on video chat." I nodded, swallowing the bitter pill of being an afterthought in my own family. "Of course. Tell Emma I'm proud of her. Perhaps she'd like help with her lines?" "Sure, Mom. Maybe this weekend." We both knew it was a lie. Cassandra had been systematically limiting my contact with the children for months. The door closed behind him, taking the warmth and connection with it, leaving me once again in my carefully decorated prison. I hadn't always lived in the garage of the beautiful colonial home in Meadowbrook, Connecticut. Until 18 months ago, the house had been mine, every shingle, floorboard, and window. Samuel and I had purchased it as a fixer-upper in the early 1980s when James was just a toddler. Samuel had been a master woodworker, crafting the built-in bookshelves, the intricately carved banister, and the window seats that made the house special. I'd been an English literature professor at the local university, bringing home a steady income while Samuel built his custom furniture business. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. More importantly, we were planners. Samuel always said, "The best safety net is the one you weave yourself, thread by careful thread." We lived modestly, invested consistently, and created a life rich in the things that mattered: books, music, good food, and family gatherings where ideas flowed as freely as laughter. When Samuel died of a sudden heart attack 10 years ago, I'd been devastated but not destitute. His life insurance, our investments, and my university pension ensured I could maintain our home and continue the traditions we'd built together. James had already moved to Boston with his new wife, Cassandra, pursuing a career in corporate finance. I'd visited them occasionally, watching with a mixture of joy and concern as their lifestyle grew increasingly lavish while their debt mounted in parallel. I turned my attention back to the beef bourguignon, taking a small bite. Despite everything, I still cook with love. It's a language I've spoken all my life, one that Cassandra has never bothered to learn. The dish is perfect. The beef tender, the sauce rich with wine and herbs from the garden I still tend in the far corner of the backyard. It's the same recipe I made the night James told me Cassandra had been laid off from her marketing executive position, the same night he'd mentioned they might need to downsize their Boston penthouse. "Mom, we've been thinking," he'd said during that visit, his eyes fixed on the pattern of the tablecloth rather than meeting mine. "Emma and Zachary miss you so much. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we all lived together? The schools in Meadowbrook are excellent, and there's plenty of room in this house. I should have recognized the calculation behind his sudden appreciation for his hometown. But widowhood can be desperately lonely, and the thought of having my grandchildren nearby was intoxicating. "You want to move back to Connecticut?" I asked, trying to keep the hope from my voice. "Actually, we were thinking it might make sense for you to sign the house over to us," Cassandra interjected smoothly. "For estate planning purposes. You'd still live here, of course, but it would save on inheritance taxes later. And with the housing market so strong, we could leverage the equity to pay off some of our debt and start fresh." I remember how my spoon had paused halfway to my mouth. Sign over the deed? But this house is my security, my home. James had reached for my hand then, his expression earnest. "You'd be helping us provide stability for your grandchildren, Mom. You're always saying family comes first, and it's not like anything would really change for you." Except everything had changed. The ink on the deed transfer had barely dried, before Cassandra began her systematic campaign to remake both the house and the family hierarchy. First came the renovations. Samuel's carefully crafted bookshelves torn out to make way for built-in entertainment centers. The warm, honey-colored hardwood floors covered with trendy gray vinyl planking. My gardening books and beloved literature. Collection boxed up and stored in the attic to make room for Cassandra's collection of designer coffee table books that no one ever opened. Then came the social changes. My weekly book club, which had met in my living room for 15 years, was informed that the space was now reserved for Cassandra's yoga sessions. The Sunday family dinners I'd hosted for neighbors and friends were replaced by Cassandra's networking. Events with James's banking colleagues and her former marketing connections. I was allowed to cook for these gatherings, but discouraged from attending them. My comfortable slacks and cardigans apparently disrupted the aesthetic Cassandra was cultivating. "We need to present a certain image now that James is up for partner," she'd explained, as if I were a child who couldn't understand adult concerns. "These people expect a particular lifestyle." I set aside my now empty dinner plate and reached for my journal, a leather-bound book Samuel had given me on our 30th anniversary. Inside, alongside my thoughts and poetry, is a careful accounting of the changes in my life since signing over the house. Professor Habits die hard. I've documented everything with the same methodical attention I once applied to researching Victorian literature. The move to the garage had come just before Thanksgiving, when Cassandra's parents arrived for an extended visit. "It's just temporary," James had promised, helping me relocate my personal items to the space above the detached garage, once Samuel's workshop, hastily converted with the addition of a cot, mini refrigerator, and the ancient space heater that now struggles against the January cold. The temporary arrangement had stretched through Christmas, then into the new year. Each time I inquired about moving back to my bedroom, there was a new excuse. Cassandra's college friend was visiting. They were converting my room into a home office. The children needed more play space. The real message was clear. There was no longer a place for me in the home I had built. Yet I continued to cook every meal, clean every surface, and tend to every need. Not because I was submissive or broken, but because I was watching and waiting, gathering information, making plans. Because what Cassandra didn't know, what even James had forgotten, was that I hadn't signed over everything. A sharp knock interrupts my thoughts. Before I can answer, the door swings open, bringing with it a gust of cold air and Cassandra's perfected smile. At 38, my daughter-in-law maintains the polished appearance of the marketing executive she once was. Highlighted hair falling in precise waves, cashmere sweater draped just so over tailored slacks, an expression of practiced concern that never quite reaches her calculating eyes. "Margaret, I wanted to check if you need anything," she says, her gaze sweeping critically over my modest accommodations. "James mentioned your arthritis has been bothering you. Perhaps we should look into assisted living options. There's a lovely facility in Westport that offers cooking classes. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. You'd be with people your own age. The suggestion lands like a slap. I'm only 68, still vital, still sharp, still capable of managing my own life. But Cassandra has been steadily building a narrative of my decline, exaggerating every minor health complaint, every momentary forgetfulness. That's thoughtful, Cassandra. But I'm quite comfortable here, I reply, matching her false smile with one of my own. Though I did wonder if you received the property tax bill. It came to my email, but of course the house is in your name now. A flicker of annoyance crosses her face. The property taxes on the Colonial are substantial, something Cassandra hadn't fully calculated when orchestrating the transfer. I'll have James handle it. Speaking of finances, we need to discuss your contribution to the household. I raise an eyebrow, waiting. Well, since you're living here, using utilities, eating food... She gestures vaguely. James feels awkward bringing it up, but we think $800 a month would be fair. For room and board. I allow the silence to stretch between us, watching her. Confidence wavers slightly in the face of my calm assessment. She doesn't know that I've been recording our conversations, documenting the slow progression of financial demands and diminishing accommodations. She doesn't know that I've been in contact with my former university colleague who specializes in elder law. Most importantly, she doesn't know about the safe deposit box at Meadowbrook National Bank or what it contains. I see, I finally say. And will that contribution earn me a place at the dinner table? Perhaps permission to use the living room I designed? Or is $800 the going rate for a garage apartment with questionable heating and no proper bathroom? Color rises in Cassandra's cheeks. This is exactly the attitude James and I find difficult, Margaret. We've opened our home to you. Your home? I interrupt, my voice soft but sharp as a blade. How interesting that you see it that way. Cassandra's eyes narrow. The deed is in our names. Legally, this is our property now. Your living here is... a courtesy. A courtesy, I repeat, tasting the bitterness of the word. Like the courtesy of allowing me to cook your meals, clean your house, care for your children when your nanny calls in sick. Those kinds of courtesies? If you're unhappy with the arrangement, you're free to make other plans, she says, her tone hardening. Though on a teacher's pension, I imagine your options are limited. Little does she know. I've allowed this misconception to persist, that my financial resources are limited to my modest pension. Neither James nor Cassandra has bothered to ask about the proceeds from Samuel's life insurance, our investments, or the patents on Samuel's furniture designs that still generate royalties. They see what they expect to see, a helpless widow dependent on their grudging charity. I'll think about your offer, I say, turning back to my journal in a clear dismissal. Please let Emma know I'm available if she needs help with her lines for the play. Cassandra lingers, perhaps surprised by my lack of argument, perhaps suspicious of my calm. James and I are attending a fundraiser this Saturday. We'll need you to watch the children. Not a request, a statement. I nod without looking up. Of course. When the door finally closes behind her, I release a long breath and open my journal to a fresh page. At the top, I write, January 15th. Phase 1 complete. Below that, I begin a detailed account of our conversation, noting Cassandra's exact words, her demeanor, and her demands. Then I reach for my phone, not the outdated flip phone I use around the house, but the smartphone I keep charged and hidden in a hollowed-out copy of Jane Eyre. I scroll to a contact labeled simply EL and type a brief message. Time to move forward. Can you meet tomorrow? The response comes almost immediately. Noon, the usual place. Bringing the documents you requested. I allow myself a small smile as I tuck the phone away. For 18 months, I've been the perfect mother-in-law. Uncomplaining, helpful, invisible, when convenient, available when needed. I've cooked and cleaned and cared for my grandchildren while being systematically erased from my own life. I've watched as Cassandra and James dismantled the home Samuel and I built, leveraging its value to support a lifestyle they couldn't afford, but they've failed to see what's right in front of them. Behind the soft cardigans and gentle voice is the woman who put herself through graduate school while raising a child alone after Samuel's first heart attack temporarily sidelined him. The woman who became a department chair at a prestigious university. The woman who managed the family finances with such skill that we never carried debt, not even during the market crash of 2008. The cold seeps further into the garage as night deepens, but for the first time in months, I feel a different kind of warmth spreading through me. The warmth of purpose, of justice approaching, of reclaiming what's mine. They think I'm just a burden, an old woman with nowhere else to go. They have no idea what's coming. Morning light filters weakly through the single window of my garage dwelling, casting long shadows across the cement floor. I've been awake for hours, my sleep disturbed by both the persistent cold and the weight of anticipation. Today I meet with Eleanor Lawton, my former student, dear friend, and one of Connecticut's most formidable estate attorneys. In my university days, colleagues called us the literary lioness and the legal eagle. Together, we'd navigated department politics, curriculum reforms, and the occasional scandal with strategic precision. Now, we were about to embark on a different kind of campaign. I dress carefully in layers, thermal underwear beneath corduroy slacks and a wool sweater, topped with the camel hair coat Samuel gave me for our 25th anniversary. To Cassandra, I'll appear as the dowdy mother-in-law heading to my weekly library volunteering session. She doesn't need to know about my other appointments. The main house is already bustling with morning activity when I slip through the side entrance to prepare breakfast. This has become my unspoken duty, having meals ready precisely when needed, then vanishing before I become an inconvenience. Today, I'm laying out a spread of French toast, fresh fruit, and maple sausages when Emma bursts into the kitchen, her 10-year-old energy a welcome brightness. "Grandma, I memorized all my lines for the play." She flings her arms around my waist, her face tilted up with a gap-toothed smile that squeezes my heart. "Will you help me practice?" "I'd love nothing more," I tell her, smoothing her auburn hair. "So, like her grandfather's." "What time would work for you?" "After school? I could come to your room and we could—" "Emma." Cassandra's voice cuts through our moment, sharp as a kitchen knife. "Don't bother grandmother with your play. She's busy with her activities." She sweeps into the room in her designer exercise wear, tossing an empty protein shake bottle into the recycling with practiced casualness. "Besides, we've hired Ms. Patterson from the community theater to coach you properly." Emma's arms loosen around me. "But Grandma was a literature professor. She knows Shakespeare." "That was a long time." "Uggo, sweetie." Cassandra pours herself coffee from the pot I brewed. "Things have changed in education since then. More modern approaches." She glances at me with a thin smile. "No offense, Margaret." "None taken," I reply, though the barb stings. "I taught Shakespeare for over 30 years, directed the university theater program for 5, and published 3 well-received books on theatrical interpretations of classic literature. But in Cassandra's narrative, I'm just an outdated old woman whose accomplishments have faded into irrelevance." "The French toast looks lovely," she continues, checking her fitness watch. "Though I'll just have fruit. We're trying to cut down on refined carbs, remember? Perhaps you could prepare something more health-conscious tomorrow." "Of course." I hand Emma a plate, catching her eye with a secret wink. Zachary usually wakes up at 7:15. His lunch is packed in the blue container, the one with the solar system stickers. Extra apple slices, no peanut butter. I think I can manage my own children's breakfast. Cassandra says with an edge to her voice. I nod and gather my purse, a well-worn leather satchel that's carried student papers, lecture notes, and now my evidence against the slow erosion of my dignity. I'll be back around 4. The beef stew for dinner is already in the slow cooker. Just turn it to low at noon. As I head for the door, James appears, his tie half knotted, phone pressed to his ear. He gives me a distracted wave but doesn't interrupt his call. Something about quarterly projections and client portfolios. I remember a different James. The boy who built birdhouses with his father, who read poetry aloud on our porch swing, who swore he'd never be defined by material success. The garage door opens to a crisp January morning, the kind that turns breath, to clouds and makes the snow crunch underfoot. I make my way carefully down the driveway, past Cassandra's gleaming SUV and James's least luxury sedan. My 10-year-old Volvo, practical, reliable, and paid for, waits at the curb, a physical embodiment of the values that once defined our family. As I drive toward town, my mind drifts back to the day everything changed, the day I signed away, my home. It wasn't a sudden decision, though James and Cassandra had certainly pressed for quick action. The market's at its peak, they'd insisted. If we wait, you could lose thousands in potential equity. There had been warning signs, red flags I'd chosen to ignore because acknowledging them meant accepting a painful truth. My son had become someone I no longer recognized. The transformation had begun during James's final year at Dartmouth, when he'd switched his major from environmental science to finance. There's more opportunity, he'd explained during a rare visit home. I can always support environmental causes once I've established myself. Samuel had been concerned, sharing his worries with me late at night. Money changes people, Maggie. Not the having of it, but the relentless pursuit. Then came Cassandra, whom James met at a networking event in Boston. She was beautiful, ambitious, and laser-focused on projecting the right image. Their courtship had been a whirlwind of exclusive restaurants, weekend getaways, and calculated social appearances. The wedding, an elaborate affair at a coastal resort, had little resemblance to the intimate family gathering James had once said he wanted. They seem happy, I'd told Samuel afterward, trying to convince myself. Just different priorities than we had. Samuel had squeezed my hand. The problem with building a life on appearances, Maggie, is that you can never stop maintaining the facade. It becomes a hunger that's never satisfied. He was right, as he so often was. James and Cassandra's lifestyle expanded to match each salary increase and promotion. The starter condo became a luxury apartment, then the penthouse. Designer clothes, exclusive memberships, lavish vacations, each acquisition seeming to necessitate the next. They carried the trappings of success, but beneath the surface lurked mountains of debt. Student loans, car leases, credit cards, a mortgage that stretched even James's substantial income. I didn't know the full extent of their financial precarity until after Samuel's death. James had called with increasing frequency, our conversations gradually shifting from family news to probing questions about my finances. "Just want to make sure you're taken care of, Mom," he'd say. "Dad would want me to look out for you." The truth was, Samuel had already ensured I was well looked out for, though we'd both agreed to keep the details private. People reveal themselves when they think money is at stake, he'd cautioned. Even family, especially family. When Cassandra lost her marketing position during a corporate merger, the facade began to crack. Their calls became more urgent, their visits more strategic. That's when the proposal emerged. I would sign over the house to them, securing James's children's future while simplifying my life. I could continue living there, of course. Nothing would really change, except Samuel wasn't there to remind me of our plan to bolster my resolve. Grief and loneliness had worn away my defenses, making the prospect of a house filled with family again irresistibly tempting. So I'd agreed, but not without taking precautions. Before signing the deed transfer, I'd met with Eleanor and executed the contingency plan Samuel and I had established years earlier. The contents of the safe deposit box, the separate accounts, the cabin in Vermont that James had forgotten existed, all secured beyond the reach of my son's financial desperation or Cassandra's calculating ambition. My reverie breaks as I pull into the parking lot of Meadowbrook Library, a stately brick building where I still lead a monthly literature discussion group. Inside, I exchange pleasantries with the staff, drop off the novel I've finished, and proceed to the private study room I've reserved. Eleanor is already waiting, her silver hair cut in a no-nonsense bob, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviews a stack of documents. "Margaret," she rises with a warm smile that quickly fades to concern. "You've lost weight, and that cough doesn't sound good." "Unheated garage living isn't particularly conducive to good health," I reply dryly, setting my satchel on the table. "But I'm managing." Eleanor's eyes flash with the same indignation that made her a formidable presence in courtrooms across the state. "This has gone on long enough. When you first told me about the garage situation, I thought surely they'd come to their senses within a week. Cassandra doesn't have senses to come to, only calculations." I sink into the chair across from her, feeling the weight of months of indignities pressing down. "Last night, she informed me I'm expected to pay $800 a month for the privilege of sleeping in their garage and cooking their meals." Eleanor mutters something that wouldn't be appropriate in her professional circles. "Have you documented everything as we discussed?" I nod, removing my journal from the satchel. Every conversation, every change to my living situation, every promise broken. I've also recorded several interactions. I place my smartphone on the table. Connecticut is a one-party consent state for recordings, correct? It is. She taps a manicured nail against the table. And you've never confronted them directly about the conditions or their failure to honor the verbal agreement about your living arrangements? I've made inquiries about returning to my original bedroom, but I've never explicitly challenged the overall arrangement. I wanted to see how far they would go. And now you know. Eleanor opens a folder emblazoned with her law firm's logo. "They'll go exactly as far as you allow them to, and then one step further. It's time to execute our plan. I've prepared everything as we discussed. For the next hour, we review documents, update financial arrangements, and finalize the timeline for what Eleanor calls Operation Restoration. By the time we finish, a calm certainty has replaced my earlier anxiety. The path forward is clear, each step carefully considered." "What about the grandchildren?" I ask, the one concern that still causes my resolve to waver. "Emma and Zachary are innocent in all this." Eleanor's expression softens. "Your relationship with them is protected in every document. In fact, I've included specific provisions for their education and well-being that can't be touched by James or Cassandra. You're not just recovering your dignity, Margaret. You're preserving their future." This reassurance steadies me. Everything I've endured, the cold nights, the subtle humiliations, the gradual erasure of my presence in my own home, has been in part because I couldn't bear to be separated from Emma and Zachary. James might have forgotten the values his father and I taught him, but his children still have a chance. We part with a firm plan in place, the first actions to begin tomorrow. As I drive back toward the house that is no longer legally mine, I think about the moment Samuel and I first walked through its empty rooms 35 years ago. It had needed work, extensive work. But Samuel had moved from space to space, with growing excitement, describing what each room could become. "This will be James's room," he'd said, opening the door to what would become a boys' sanctuary, complete with a window seat for reading and walls painted to resemble a forest. "And this," he continued, showing me the sunroom overlooking the garden, "this will be your special place, where you can grade papers and write your books surrounded by light." That sunroom is now Cassandra's home office, the handcrafted bookshelves replaced with sleek floating shelves that hold decorative objects instead of books. The window seat cushions, which I'd sewn from fabric that matched the garden's spring blooms, have been discarded in favor of minimalist design that photographs well for Cassandra's social media presence. I pull into the driveway just as Zachary's school bus arrives. My 7-year-old grandson barrels down the steps and races toward me, his backpack bouncing against his narrow shoulders. "Grandma, I got 100 on my science test," he exclaims as I exit the car. "The one you helped me study for about the water cycle. That's wonderful, Zach." I kneel to his level despite the protest from my knees. "I knew you'd do brilliantly. You understood the concepts perfectly." He beams, missing front tooth creating a whistling sound as he breathes excitedly. "Can we work on my volcano project next? Jimmy Watson said his dad's going to help him make one that explodes real lava, but I told him that's impossible because real lava is over 1,000 degrees and it would burn down the school." I laugh, ruffling his hair, wild curls that never stay, combed for more than 10 minutes. "Very scientifically reasoned. And yes, we can absolutely work on a volcano that won't burn down the school." "Cool. I'll get my stuff and come to your room after snack." He dashes toward the house, joy and energy radiating from every movement. As I follow more slowly, I notice Cassandra watching from the front window, her expression unreadable. When I enter, she's waiting in the foyer, arms crossed over her cashmere sweater. "The children have piano lessons at 4:30, she says without preamble. "There's no time for science projects today." I see. I remove my coat, hanging it on the peg that's still designated as mine, one of the few remaining acknowledgments of my existence in the house. "Perhaps Saturday morning?" "We have the realtor coming Saturday to discuss listing options for the Vermont property. You remember? The cabin you mentioned last Christmas?" Her smile doesn't reach her eyes. "James found the deed among his father's papers. Apparently it's quite valuable now, with the ski resort expansion nearby. The Vermont cabin, my cabin, secured through Evergreen Holdings, the LLC Samuel and I had established specifically to protect certain assets. A property James has no legal claim to, despite whatever document he thinks he's found. How enterprising, I say mildly, unlacing my boots. Though I'm surprised James remembers the cabin. He hasn't visited since he was 12. "Real estate is. Real estate," Cassandra shrugs. "And we could use the capital for Emma and Zachary's college funds." What she means is they could use the money to continue maintaining the lifestyle they can't actually afford. The children's education is already secured through trusts Samuel and I established years ago, trusts Cassandra knows nothing about. "I'm sure you'll do what's best," I murmur, heading toward the kitchen to begin dinner preparations. "Will James be home for the beef stew, or is he working late again?" "He has a client dinner. I'll be taking the children to their lessons and then meeting friends for drinks. There's a fundraiser planning committee I've joined." She follows me, watching, as I wash my hands and don an apron. "We'll need you to stay with the children until about 9. Not a request, a statement of expectation, as if my time belongs to her, an extension of the property she now claims as her own. I nod agreeably, already calculating how this change affects tomorrow's timeline. Of course, I'll help them with homework and make sure they're in bed by 8:30. Cassandra's phone chimes, and she glances at it with a slight frown. "That's my mother. I should take this." She turns to leave, then pauses. "Oh, and Margaret? About that monthly contribution we discussed. James and I were thinking it should start February 1st. We'll set up a direct deposit from your account. Doesn't wait for my response, already engaged in her phone conversation as she strides from the kitchen. Just as well, it gives me the privacy to smile as I reach for the slow cooker. By February 1st, everything will have changed. The beef stew simmers, filling the kitchen with savory aromas that will linger long after I've been banished back to the garage. I begin preparing a separate dish for tomorrow, a special meal that requires marinating overnight. It's an old family recipe, one that James loved as a child. Samuel's celebration roast, named because we served it on significant occasions. Birthdays, anniversaries, academic achievements. Tomorrow will certainly qualify as significant. The first day of Operation Restoration. The day Margaret Sullivan reclaims what's rightfully hers. As I slice herbs from my windowsill garden, I hear Zachary's footsteps thundering down the stairs. He appears in the doorway, clutching his science folder and a box of art supplies. "Can we work in here, Grandma? It smells so good." "Absolutely." I clear a space at the kitchen island, my heart warming at his enthusiasm. "Tell me more about this volcano that won't destroy the school." For the next hour, as we design a scientifically accurate model of Mount Vesuvius, I push aside thoughts of tomorrow's confrontation. This moment, helping my grandson learn, watching his mind work, hearing him laugh. This is what matters. This is what I'm fighting for. Not just the house, not just my dignity, but the future of these children. A future where they understand that family means more than financial transactions, where they learn that a person's worth isn't measured by the image they project or the possessions they acquire. Samuel would be proud of that mission, and tomorrow, I'll take the first step toward fulfilling it. Dawn breaks with a crystalline clarity that only comes with severe cold. The temperature in the garage dipped below freezing overnight. I know because the glass of water by my bedside developed a thin sheet of ice. The space heater gave up around 2 a.m., its ancient motor finally surrendering after decades of service. I spent the remainder of the night huddled under every blanket I own, dozing fitfully, my breath clouding the air with each exhale. By 5:30, I abandoned the pretense of sleep and rise, my joints protesting as I shuffle to the small electric kettle. That serves as my kitchen. Tea will help. It always does. Samuel used to say I believed tea could solve any problem, from writer's block to international conflict. "It's not the tea itself," I'd tell him, "but the ritual of making it. The pause it creates. I need that pause now, that moment of centering before the day unfolds. Because today, everything changes. The kitchen is dark and silent when I slip into the main house. For once, I'm grateful for Cassandra's insistence on the open-concept renovation that gutted the home's original cozy rooms. It means I can see, at a glance, that I'm alone, free to move through the space that was once mine without performing the careful dance of invisibility I've perfected over the last 18 months. I begin my preparations, moving with practiced efficiency. First, Samuel's celebration roast comes out of the refrigerator, the marinade having worked its magic overnight. I transfer it to the Dutch oven, one of the few kitchen items Cassandra deemed worthy of keeping during her ruthless modernization, and set it in the oven on low heat. It will cook slowly throughout the day, filling the house with memories in the form of aromas. Next, I prepare breakfast for the family. Steel-cut oatmeal with caramelized apples and cinnamon, James's favorite. As a child, I set the coffee maker to brew at 6:45, precisely when Cassandra will emerge from her bedroom, dressed in athleisure wear for her morning Pilates session. The children's lunches are assembled with care, turkey and avocado on whole grain for Emma, who recently declared herself mostly vegetarian but not for birds. Ham and cheese with the crusts meticulously removed for Zachary, who's going through a phase of extreme particularity about food textures. By 6:30, everything is in place. I retreat to the small powder room off the laundry area, the only bathroom I'm permitted to use since Cassandra claimed my personal things cluttered the main bathrooms. From my apron pocket, I withdraw a small cosmetics bag containing items I haven't used in months: mascara, blush, tinted lip balm. Small acts of reclamation. The face that looks back at me from the mirror is both familiar and strange. The bone structure that once turned heads is still there beneath the new lines. My silver hair, which I've always worn long, has lost some of its luster from months of stress and poor nutrition. But my eyes, Samuel always said they were my most striking feature, remain clear and determined, the deep blue that Emma inherited. I apply makeup with a light hand, just enough to bring some color back to my face. Then I twist my hair into a simple chignon, securing it with the silver pins Samuel gave me on our first anniversary, when we could barely afford essentials. Beautiful things matter, he'd said, especially when they're not necessary. When I emerge, Cassandra is already in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone while the coffee I prepared steams in her monogrammed mug. She looks up with a slight frown. "You're dressed up," she observes, her tone suggesting this is somehow inappropriate. I'm wearing simple black slacks and a cranberry sweater, hardly formal attire, but a significant departure from the faded house dresses and cardigans I've adopted as protective camouflage. "I have errands in town today," I reply, busying myself with wiping down the already spotless counter. "The Philanthropic Society is having its winter luncheon." This is a calculated disclosure. Cassandra knows about my involvement with the Meadowbrook Philanthropic Society. She's attempted to leverage it several times to gain access to the old money circles of Connecticut society. What she doesn't know is the true extent of my standing in that organization, or that today's luncheon is actually an emergency board meeting I've called as committee chair. Oh, her interest visibly sharpens. "At the country club, perhaps? I could join you. I've been meaning to discuss the spring fundraiser with Diane Hollister." Diane Hollister, whose family founded Meadowbrook, has famously declined all of Cassandra's attempts at social connection. A fact that clearly rankles my daughter-in-law. Members only for this meeting, I'm afraid. I pour myself a cup of coffee, noting with satisfaction how the simple act of claiming space in the kitchen seems to unsettle her. The oatmeal is ready whenever the children come down. James appears, adjusting his tie, his phone already pressed to his ear. Another early call with the Tokyo office, another day of chasing the financial success that seems perpetually just beyond his grasp. He nods at me, then does a subtle double take at my appearance before turning his attention to Cassandra. "Peterson wants the Davidson portfolio restructured by noon," he says after ending his call. "I'll need to go in early." "But you promised to take the paperwork to the Vermont realtor today," Cassandra replies, her voice taking on the edge that appears whenever plans change. "The cabin listing is time-sensitive with the resort expansion. The cash would really help with—" She stops abruptly, glancing at me. I pretend not to hear, focusing on preparing a bowl of oatmeal for Zachary, who has shuffled into the kitchen in dinosaur pajamas, his hair sticking up in all directions. "We'll discuss it later," James says, his tone making it clear he doesn't appreciate the near slip. He grabs his briefcase, drops a quick kiss on Cassandra's cheek, and ruffles Zachary's hair. "Have a good day, champ. Crush that spelling test." "Bye, Dad," Zachary mumbles through a mouthful of oatmeal. "Grandma, can you help me practice my words before school?" "Of course, sweetheart. Let me see your list." I sit beside him, aware of Cassandra's thin-lipped disapproval. She's been trying to minimize my academic influence on the children, insisting that educational methods have evolved significantly since my teaching days. Emma arrives next, already dressed in her schooler uniform with her auburn hair neatly braided. Unlike her brother, she's immediately aware of the subtle tension in the room, her perceptive gaze moving from her mother's rigid posture to my unusually polished appearance. "You look pretty, Grandma," she says, giving me a quick hug before sliding onto a stool. "Is that sweater new?" "Thank you, dear. It's actually quite old, I just haven't worn it in a while." The sweater, a gift from Samuel, had been carefully stored in one of the boxes Cassandra relegated to the garage attic. I'd retrieved it last night, along with several other items I'd need for today. Cassandra checks her watch with an exaggerated gesture. "Emma, hurry with your breakfast. Ms. Patterson is coming early to run through your monologue before school." But Grandma's helping Zachary with spelling. She could help me too. She knows Shakespeare. Ms. Patterson is a trained drama coach who works with children, Cassandra replies, the implication clear. I am neither trained nor relevant in her estimation. I bite back the retort that rises to my lips. Not yet. The time for confrontation isn't quite right. Your mother knows best, I tell Emma, though the words taste false. Enjoy your session with Ms. Patterson. Perhaps you can recite your monologue for me this weekend. The morning proceeds with its usual choreographed efficiency. Children fed, dressed, and dispatched to their respective activities. Cassandra rushing out for her Pilates class, pausing only to remind me that the house needs to be spotless for her book club this afternoon. These women have impeccable homes, she emphasizes, as if I might not grasp the importance of appearances. At 8:30, the house falls silent. I stand in the middle of the kitchen, allowing myself to really see what's become of the home Samuel and I created. The warm yellow walls now painted a sterile gray. The children's artwork, once proudly displayed, on the refrigerator, replaced by minimalist magnets that hold nothing. The dining room table, where we'd hosted decades of family meals, now serves as a backdrop for Cassandra's carefully curated social media presence. I move through each downstairs room, mentally cataloging what's been lost and what remains. In the living room, I find one of the last photographs of Samuel and me together, taken at James's graduate school commencement. It's been shifted to a less prominent position, partially obscured by a large designer vase that never holds flowers. The grandfather clock in the hallway, Samuel's first major furniture commission, still stands, though Cassandra has complained about its chiming disrupting her sleep. I run my hand along its walnut case, feeling the grain of the wood Samuel had selected with such care. Inside the case, tucked into a hidden compartment he designed, is the key to his workshop behind the garage, a space Cassandra hasn't managed to infiltrate because she doesn't know it exists. The separate entrance is concealed by the massive hydrangea bushes I've strategically allowed to grow wild on that side of the property. At 9:15, precisely on schedule, my phone chimes with a text. From Eleanor. Court records filed. Notifications will be delivered by 11 a.m. Are you prepared for potential fallout? Everything is in place, I respond. Meeting the board at noon. Contractors arrive at 2. Her reply is immediate and bolstering. Samuel would be proud. Stand firm. Slip out the back door and make my way to Samuel's workshop. Unlike the converted living space above the garage where I've been exiled, this sanctum remains exactly as he left it. Tools arranged with meticulous precision on pegboards, half-finished projects protected under cloths, the scent of sawdust and linseed oil preserved like a time capsule. From the built-in cabinet, I retrieve the leather portfolio Samuel and I prepared in those final difficult months of his illness. Inside are duplicates of the documents Eleanor filed this morning, proof of ownership for the Vermont cabin through Evergreen Holdings, financial records showing the systematic diversion of funds from my accounts to James and Cassandra's over the past year, and most crucially, the original agreement signed by both James and Cassandra, stipulating the conditions under which the house deed was transferred. Conditions they have systematically violated, documented in exhaustive detail in my journal. The workshop phone rings. N. Old landline Samuel insisted on keeping as backup. Only 3 people have this number. Eleanor, my sister Catherine in Arizona, and Dr. Chen, my physician. It's started, Eleanor says without preamble when I answer. The courier just confirmed delivery of the notices to James's office. You should expect his call within the hour. And the board meeting. Everyone's confirmed attendance. Diane Hollister is particularly interested in your proposal for the new scholarship program. And Margaret, her voice softens. Dr. Chen called me this morning. He's concerned about your latest test results. The respiratory infection isn't responding to the antibiotics. I suppress a cough that would only validate her concern. One problem at a time, Eleanor. I'll see Dr. Chen after things settle here. Just don't wait too long, she cautions. This damp cold isn't doing you any favors. After we hang up, I gather the materials I'll need for the Philanthropic Society meeting and place them in my leather satchel. As chair of the Education Committee, I'll be presenting our proposal to establish 3 full scholarships for students pursuing vocational education in traditional crafts, woodworking, metalsmithing, textile arts. A living memorial to Samuel's belief that working with one's hands connected people to their humanity. The funding for these scholarships will come from the Samuel Sullivan Memorial Trust, a substantial endowment that James and Cassandra know nothing about, established with the proceeds from Samuel's life insurance policy and the sale of his most valuable furniture designs to a prestigious manufacturing company. My phone rings as I'm locking the workshop. James's name flashes on the screen. Right on schedule. Mother, what the hell is going on? His voice is tight with barely controlled panic. I just received legal papers saying I'm being sued for breach of contract and elder abuse. There must be some mistake. No mistake, James, I reply, my voice steady despite the painful thudding of my heart. This is my son, my only child, and what's unfolding will forever alter our relationship. Those papers reflect the reality of the past 18 months. I think we need to have a conversation about the conditions I've been living in and the agreement you and Cassandra signed when I transferred the house deed. This is insane, he sputters. We've given you a place to live, food, everything you need. You've relegated me to an unheated garage that's made me seriously ill, I interrupt, the doctor's concerned face flashing in my memory. You've systematically isolated me from my grandchildren. You've appropriated my pension deposits without consent. And now Cassandra intends to charge me rent for the privilege of sleeping in a space that's not legally habitable. A lengthy silence follows. When James speaks again, his voice has shifted from indignation to calculation. Mom, if this is about moving back into the main house, we can discuss that. There's no need for lawyers. It's far beyond that now, I say, feeling a curious mixture of sadness and liberation. The legal notifications you've received are courtesy copies. The originals were filed with the court this morning, along with my petition for emergency injunctive relief. Judge Harriman has already signed the order. Judge, how do you even know Judge Harriman? The confusion in his voice would be almost comical if the situation weren't so painful. James has no idea who his mother actually is, the life I've lived, the connections I've maintained. Barbara Harriman was my student before she was a judge, I explain. As were 3 of the partners at Lawton, Bennett & Crane, the firm representing me. Eleanor Lawton and I have been friends for 30 years. Another stunned silence. Then, more desperately, Mom, whatever Cassandra has done to upset you, I'm sure we can work it out, as a family. That's what I wanted 18 months ago, when I signed over the house. A family arrangement based on mutual respect and care. Instead, I got exploitation and neglect. My voice catches despite my resolve. The contractors will arrive at 2 o'clock to begin converting the pool house into my new residence, a legal dwelling with proper heating and plumbing. The court order prevents you or Cassandra from interfering with this construction. The pool house. But Cassandra has plans to turn that into a yoga studio for her new wellness business. Of course she does. Another venture doomed to fail. Another expensive renovation to maintain appearances. The property covenants filed with the original deed transfer explicitly designate the pool house as my secondary residence if needed, I remind him. Paragraph 12, which you both initialed. The document they clearly never read carefully, too eager to get their hands on the valuable property. This is going to destroy Cassandra, James says, his voice hollow. We're already stretched financially with the renovations and her business launch. If this becomes public, it doesn't have to become public, I interject. The court records are sealed for now at my request. But things will change, James. I won't continue living as a glorified servant in my own home. My phone beeps with another incoming call. Dr. Chen's office. I have to go, I tell James. We'll talk more this evening. I suggest you read the court order thoroughly before making any decisions. I switch to the incoming call, Dr. Chen's nurse. informing me that my latest chest X-ray results require immediate follow-up. Dr. Chen wants you to come in today, if possible. He's concerned about the progression of the pneumonia. Pneumonia. The word lands heavily, explaining the increasing difficulty I've had breathing, the persistent pain in my chest, the physical manifestation of months of living in cold, damp conditions. I can come at 4, I tell her, mentally rearranging my schedule. The board meeting can't be postponed, but I can skip supervising the initial pool house inspection. As I end the call, another text from Eleanor arrives. Cassandra just called the office, threatening countersuits. Her exact words, "Margaret has no idea who she's dealing with. Proceed with caution." I actually smile at this. Cassandra is the one who has no idea who she's dealing with. She's about to discover that beneath the accommodating grandmother exterior is a woman who chaired an academic department for 15 years, who negotiated publishing contracts that secured her financial future, who co-managed investments that outperformed the market even during recessions. A woman who has finally reached her breaking point. My phone rings again. Cassandra this time. I silence it and slip the phone into my pocket. There will be time for confrontation later. Right now, I have more important matters to attend to. Securing my future, protecting my grandchildren's inheritance, and, apparently, addressing the pneumonia that's been building in my lungs while I slept in their garage. I lock the workshop and walk toward my car, each step feeling somehow lighter. Despite the serious situation, the Vermont cabin is secure, the philanthropic board is assembled, the legal machinery is in motion, and soon I'll have a proper place to live on the property I love. For the first time in 18 months, I am no longer a silent participant in my own erasure. I've reached the threshold where submission gives way to action, where acceptance transforms into resistance. Samuel's voice seems to whisper on the winter breeze. It's about time, Maggie. Yes, my love. It certainly is. The Meadowbrook Country Club dining room hums with the distinctive cadence of old money, quiet conversations, the subtle clink of fine china, and the barely perceptible movement of staff trained to anticipate needs before they're expressed. At the private table in the bay window overlooking the snow-covered golf course, 9 women and 3 men, the board of the Meadowbrook Philanthropic Society, listen intently as I present the proposal for the Samuel Sullivan Memorial Craft Education Fund. The initial endowment of $2 million will support 3 full scholarships annually, I explain, my voice stronger than I expected given the tightness in my chest. Recipients will receive tuition for technical training, apprenticeship, stipends, and startup grants upon completion of their programs. Diane Hollister, whose family has chaired the society for 4 generations, nods approvingly. At 82, she remains the undisputed social authority in Meadowbrook, her approval or disapproval capable of making or breaking reputations. I particularly appreciate the emphasis on traditional craftsmanship, she says. Too many young people pursue degrees with questionable value while vital skills disappear. Your late husband would be proud, Margaret. The board votes unanimously to accept the endowment and establish the program under my directorship. As we conclude the business portion of the meeting, conversation shifts to more personal matters. I understand there have been some changes to your living situation, Diane says quietly as the others begin to disperse. Her tone is casual, but her sharp eyes miss nothing. Eleanor Lawton mentioned you've had some difficulties with your daughter-in-law. In Meadowbrook's tight-knit society, privacy is often an illusion. I've anticipated this inquiry and prepared for it. A family disagreement about appropriate accommodations, I reply, deliberately vague. It's being resolved through proper channels. Diane's perfectly coiffed silver head tilts slightly. I've never cared for that young woman. Too eager to climb. Not enough substance to warrant the ascent. She pats my hand. The pool house renovation has been approved by the Historical Preservation Committee, by the way. I expedited the process myself. The property's historical designation would normally prevent such modifications, but given the circumstances, I blink in surprise. The Sullivan house is historically designated? This is news to me, and would certainly be news to Cassandra, whose modern renovations might well violate preservation guidelines. I wasn't aware the property had received that status, I admit. Diane's smile is positively feline. The paperwork was just finalized last month. Your husband's distinctive woodworking throughout the house makes it architecturally significant. I may have emphasized certain features in my recommendation to the committee. She sips her tea. The designation comes with substantial tax benefits and significant restrictions on future renovations. The notification is probably still in process. The implications are staggering. Cassandra's plans for further modernization would require approval from a committee Diane effectively controls. The property's value has likely increased substantially with the designation, but its marketability to buyers seeking to make major changes has decreased. It's a masterful chess move I hadn't even considered. Thank you, Diane. Samuel would be deeply honored. Nonsense. She waves away my gratitude. Samuel made my granddaughter's cradle and my son's library. His craftsmanship should be preserved. Her expression turned serious. Now, about your health. You don't look well, Margaret. I'm seeing Dr. Chen this afternoon, I assure her, suppressing another cough. See that you do. The society needs you at full strength. She rises with the grace of a woman half her age. I look forward to meeting the first scholarship recipients in the fall. After the meeting, I drive directly to Dr. Chen's office, where the news is sobering but not unexpected. Double pneumonia, he confirms, reviewing my chest x-rays with a concerned frown. And your blood pressure is concerning. How long has the garage been your primary residence? Since November, I admit. The heating is inconsistent. His expression tightens with professional displeasure. This is elder neglect, Margaret. As your physician, I'm obligated to report it. That won't be necessary, I assure him. Legal? Proceedings are already underway. I'll be moving into properly heated accommodations today. He seems skeptical, but continues with his examination, prescribing a course of stronger antibiotics, an inhaler for the inflammation, and most alarmingly, supplemental oxygen for nighttime use. I want you hospitalized, he says frankly. But knowing you, you'll refuse. I have too much to oversee today, I confirm. Perhaps tomorrow if necessary. He sighs with the exasperation of a doctor whose reasonable medical advice is being set aside. At minimum, you need rest, warmth, and proper nutrition. Your body can't fight infection under the conditions you've described. He writes another prescription. This is for a sedative to help you sleep. Use it tonight after you're settled in your new space. I thank him and gather the prescriptions, promising to check in tomorrow. The oxygen equipment will be delivered to the pool house by evening, another piece of evidence in the legal proceedings that's now unavoidable. By the time I return to the Sullivan house, the driveway is crowded with vehicles, a contractor's truck, Eleanor's sleek sedan, and surprisingly, James's car. He should be at work, handling the crisis with the Davidson portfolio he mentioned this morning. His presence suggests the legal notifications have created a larger disruption than anticipated. As I park on the street, my phone chimes with a text from Eleanor. Inside with James, Cassandra on her way from yoga retreat. Contractors assessing pool house. Judge Harriman called. She's expedited the TRO hearing to tomorrow morning. The temporary restraining order hearing, originally scheduled for next week, moved to tomorrow. This accelerated timeline changes the dynamics significantly. I need to ensure the pool house is ready for occupation tonight, as I'll need to present evidence of my new living conditions to the court. I make my way around the side of the house toward the pool area, avoiding the main entrance. The heated pool, Samuel's gift for my 50th birthday, has been covered for winter. the surrounding patio furniture stored away. The pool house itself is a charming structure designed to complement the main residence, with cedar shingles, and the same distinctive window casing Samuel crafted for the colonial. Inside, 2 contractors are taking measurements while Eleanor makes notes on a legal pad. James stands by the stone fireplace, his normally immaculate appearance disrupted by a loosened tie and uncombed hair. He looks up when I enter, his expression a complex mixture of anger, confusion, and what might be guilt. "Mom," he begins, then stops, apparently unsure how to continue in front of witnesses. Eleanor steps forward, professional and composed as always. "Margaret, these gentlemen are from Riverside Contractors. They believe the pool house can be made habitable by tonight with temporary measures. The full renovation will take approximately 3 weeks." The lead contractor, a burly man in his 50s, nods respectfully. "We can have heat, basic plumbing, and a secure entrance functioning by 6 p.m., Mrs. Sullivan. The existing bathroom is in good shape, just needs reconnection to the water main. We've brought temporary heating units that will keep the space comfortable until the permanent system is installed." "Thank you, Mr." "He attempted to," I reply honestly. "It didn't go as planned." A long pause, then, "I'm sorry, Mom, for everything. Words are easy. Actions matter more. But it's a start, perhaps the first genuine communication we've had in months." Outside, I hear the Wong's car pull away. One battle concluded, but the war is far from over. Cassandra and her father aren't accustomed to defeat, and wounded pride often breeds dangerous responses. No matter, I've faced down department politics, publishing, deadlines, and a lifetime of academic rivalries. I've navigated widowhood and rebuilding a life alone. I've endured 18 months of progressive humiliation while documenting every slight and planning my response. Whatever countermeasures they attempt next, I'll be ready. Spring has transformed the Sullivan property. Cherry blossoms dust the lawn, with delicate pink petals. Daffodils, planted by my hands decades ago, form bright yellow constellations around the pool house, which has evolved from emergency shelter to charming cottage over the past 3 months. The renovation expanded the structure to include a proper kitchen, a small study lined with my beloved books, and a guest room where Emma and Zachary take turns for weekend sleepovers. I stand in my new kitchen, kneading bread dough with hands that have regained their strength. The pneumonia has finally released its grip, though Dr. Chen warns I'll be more susceptible to respiratory issues going forward, a permanent souvenir of my garage accommodations. Through the window, I watch Emma helping Zachary plant a vegetable. Garden in the plot I've reclaimed from Cassandra's ornamental grasses. Their father kneels nearby, turning soil for the tomato seedlings. James has become a regular presence at these weekend gardening sessions, initially awkward in his attempts to rebuild our relationship, gradually finding his way back to the man I raised rather than the one Cassandra created. The hearing that formalized my living arrangements also forced other changes in the household. The court-approved agreement specified that I would no longer provide unpaid domestic labor. Instead, I would teach 2 literature courses at the community college, a position arranged through Eleanor's connections, and contribute a fair portion for shared utilities. The meals I prepare now are by choice, not expectation, and limited to Sunday family dinners that I host in my cottage. Cassandra's response to these changes has evolved from cold fury to resigned pragmatism. Her yoga studio now operates from rented space in town, financed largely by the Samuel Sullivan Memorial Fund's community outreach program, a delicious irony that Eleanor particularly appreciated. The historical designation of the main house prevented further modernization and significantly impacted their renovation plans, though the upside was a substantial tax benefit that helped stabilize their precarious finances. The doorbell chimes, interrupting my reflections. Through the window, I see Catherine's rental car in the driveway. My sister has flown in from Arizona for an extended visit, her first since Samuel's funeral. In her calls, she's taken to calling me Phoenix Margaret, claiming I've risen spectacularly from the ashes of widowhood and exploitation. I wipe flour from my hands and open the door to her warm embrace. "Look at you," she exclaims, stepping back to assess me properly. "Color in your cheeks, fire in your eyes, a far cry from the woman I spoke to at Christmas who could barely breathe between coughs. Amazing what proper heating and basic dignity will do for one's constitution," I reply dryly, ushering her inside. Catherine tours the cottage, approving the thoughtful touches that make it distinctly mine. Samuel's woodworking tools mounted as art on the living room wall. My academic awards displayed alongside family photographs, the reading nook with its cushioned window seat overlooking the garden. "You've created something remarkable here," she observes, settling into a chair with the tea I've prepared. "Not just the physical space, but what it represents. A reclamation." Through the window, we watch James approach with the children, hesitating at the garden gate. "He's still walking on eggshells," Catherine notes. "Healing takes time," I reply. "For all of us." I wave them in, and the children burst through the door with weekend overnight bags and excited chatter about the movie night I've promised. "Dad's coming too," Zachary announces. "Mom has a client dinner, so Dad's staying for the movie." James hovers in the doorway, uncertain of his welcome in this new ritual that has so far included only his children. "If that's all right with you, Mom?" "Of course." I make space for him at the table where Catherine is already pouring additional tea. We're watching The Princess Bride. The children have never seen it. "Dad's favorite," James says softly, the shared memory creating a momentary bridge across the damage of the past year. As we settle into the evening routine, fresh bread with soup, a movie with popcorn, the children gradually drifting to sleep, in their designated spaces, I find myself observing the scene with a sense of quiet triumph. Not because I've won every battle, but because I've created something sustainable from what was nearly destroyed: my dignity, my place in the family, my relationship with my grandchildren. Cassandra remains a complicated presence in this new arrangement, maintaining a careful distance while grudgingly acknowledging the boundaries the court established. Howard Wong has retreated to Boston, his attempted intimidation tactics rendered ineffective by my unexpected resources and connections. The main house still stands as a physical reminder of what I built with Samuel, though I no longer view it with longing or regret. My true legacy lives in this moment. Emma's head resting against my shoulder as she fights sleep. Zachary sprawled across the rug with his dinosaur pajamas. James cautiously relearning how to be my son rather than Cassandra's husband. Catherine witnessing the family's slow healing. Later, after James has carried the sleeping children to their beds and departed with awkward but genuine thanks, Catherine and I sit by the fireplace Samuel built decades ago, now transplanted to my cottage. "You know," she says thoughtfully, "this isn't how most stories like yours end. Usually, the elderly parent remains vulnerable, the exploitative children triumphant. I had advantages many don't, I acknowledge. Education, connections, financial resources I kept private, and Samuel's foresight." I glance at his photograph on the mantel. He always insisted we prepare for contingencies. Still, it took courage to use those advantages. To fight back when it would have been easier to continue diminishing yourself for peace in the family. I consider this as I watch the flames dance. Perhaps the greatest gift I've given my grandchildren isn't this cottage or the trusts for their education. It's the example that one doesn't have to accept erasure, that dignity isn't negotiable, that family obligation runs both ways. Outside, spring moonlight silvery the garden, where new growth promises future harvests. Within these walls, I've created a sanctuary, not just for myself, but for the values I refuse to relinquish, a testament to resilience that will outlast whatever remnants of resentment still simmer in the main house. I am Margaret Sullivan, Professor. Emeritus, Widow of a master craftsman, grandmother to remarkable children, I have weathered illness, betrayal, and attempted erasure to reclaim my place in the world. The garage bedroom is now just a memory, a cautionary tale of what happens when we forget that dignity is not a luxury, but a necessity, and that true, family sees each other not as resources to be exploited, but as human beings worthy of care and respect. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.